You're watching Morning at NTV.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us right here on Morning at NTV with me, Romeo Busiku. Our next conversation, we are going to be discussing cyber laws and online activity. How do the cyber laws in Uganda affect the online community right there? I have Kennedy Kasozi, that is from Barefoot Law, and Phoebe Murungi, also from Barefoot Law, and they join me right now in studio. Very good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning to you.
First of all, explain to my viewer what you do exactly, starting with you, Phoebe. What is Barefoot Law?
Yeah, so Barefoot Law is a non-profit organization, and our work is in providing or making access to justice readily available to the public. So we use digital technologies such as online platforms. We use SMS media. We use social media. We use different tools. We also use the old-fashioned tools like radio and newspapers and TV and to reach the public with this information. So our point is to provide free legal information.
To provide free legal information
Yes.
to the whole public or just the indigents?
To the public.
Okay, so how do cyber laws affect the online community?
Yeah, so cyber laws affect the online community in several ways. There are people that are affected because of their activity as business people. There are people that are affected because they are participating in crimes. There are people that are also affected because they are civil society organizations and ordinary citizens trying to get information, for instance, from the government. So we approached, in trying to come up with our report on cyber laws, we approached this in all the different ways. We looked at businesses, for instance. Businesses are affected by mobile money transactions and the financial consumer regulations that affect those. So we looked at, first of all, do people know about these guidelines? Do people understand that they have consumer protection that allows them to make reports, for instance, to the Bank of Uganda to find out if something is going wrong, how can it be rectified? And what we've learned is that there's very little awareness of that. And also because you're dealing with low bargaining power, sometimes it's very difficult to actually make your case. Then there's issues of electronic transactions, e-commerce. There are a lot of people doing online business now, as you know, but a lot of them do not understand the laws that govern them, and some of them do not think there's anything actually. So interestingly, what we find is that the regime that governs e-commerce in Uganda is actually very modern, and it's quite encompassing. There are a lot of safeguards for consumers, some of which we believe are difficult to actually enforce because they're in line with international standards. The difficulty here is for people that are already practicing offline in a way that they do not have bargaining power with the people that sell them these goods, what is the likelihood that they will actually have these safeguards when they're dealing with an online supplier? So some of the things there were, aside from the lack of awareness, the questions of effectiveness. Are these rules really effective? Because what we find is that there are actually a lot of safeguards for a person who's conducting e-commerce transactions. An interesting one is the ability to cancel a transaction long after you've even accepted the goods and services. That's something that many people don't know, but also the question is, how likely are you to get away with that in this country? So so that's on the business end. Then for CSOs and journalists, for instance, we looked at those and realized, well, there's issues of, obviously, people like in journalism have a need to get access to information from the government. One of those things will require you to use their online services, because under the Electronic Transactions Act, the government is actually required to put their stuff up on websites. As you know, some of these websites are very difficult to even to look around and find the information that you're, or even call a number, and some of them are off, right? So some of those issues are there. Although what we realize is that the law as it is provides a lot, it provides a platform. The question is ineffectiveness and enforcement.
Effectiveness and enforcement. At that point, I'd like to engage Kennedy. Kennedy, do you think these cyber laws are really effective?
The extent to which the cyber laws may be mentioned as effective is when you have a prosecution, maybe. But also we want to start with informing people about these laws, which is the essence of this report. There is a legal framework governing online activity, and majority of the people who actually online are not aware of the framework they're transacting or they're engaging in. So we move from being able to inform people to actually guide them to utilize, to work within the margin of the law and the legal framework. and then we engage the other authorities who are responsible with ensuring the governance of regulatory framework to enforce the strictness of people to comply with the law. That's what I would mention.
Kennedy, before I log on to use the internet, what should be at the back of my mind? Like to safeguard my data and to also avoid breaking any cyber laws. What should be at the back of my mind before I log into the internet?
Now, as a user, it's important for you to know that when you engage on the internet online activity, you may need to either grant consent to specific platforms when you're using those platforms, or you may need to be aware that some particular information needs to stay protected by the user. Also, when you engage in the online activity, you need to make effort to use the privacy settings on some of these online-based platforms to protect your identity, to protect personal information, so that you're not manipulated into a particular transaction or anything. Also, key to note is that as a user, you have a right for people to seek consent to access personal information. That is as to your religion, among others. So you also have entitlements which you only grant to the platform administrators or controllers with the extent of measuring what is significant for you and what may be hazardous for you. Yes.
So what may be hazardous to a consumer or a client using the internet in that regard?
What may be hazardous to a consumer is if your information is sold or is used to benefit a person who owns a platform, to enrich them to your detriment. It may also be hazardous for a user of these platforms to give personal information that may put them in a picture that is not very legally abiding. Also, you make mention the sites where you share your images, among others. Yes.
So, Phoebe, in a scenario where a company is using my data without my consent, can I sue? And what does the law in Uganda say about that?
Yes, so you have so data may include different things, as you know. It may be your personal information, it may be your image, so there's different legal regimes that are applicable for each. However, what we can say for sure is that you are safeguarded by the law. Your first step would be to contact the people that are in charge of the platform that has distributed this information or access to your data, and to inform them to cease and desist from using it, publishing it, or continuing to supply it to anyone else. That is the first step, because many times some people are using information because they believe they got it from someone who had consent, or sometimes it's a misunderstanding. So the first step is to let them know that this is your image, this is your data, you did not give them information to use, consent to use it. And so from that step, you will then know, are you dealing with someone who's doing it maliciously? Because if they continue to use your data after you have indicated that there is no consent, then you can obviously take action through the law, because there's a regime that protects you. Yeah.
Let me engage Kennedy right there. Does sharing news on the internet make me a journalist?
Sharing news on the internet does not make you a journalist. As per the regulatory framework of Uganda, for you to be a journalist, you must be a person who's actually enrolled under the law and under the guidelines of journalism to be able to call yourself a journalist and also publish content in a way of journalism. Yes.
What's the pronouncement of Uganda's law with regards to this kind of thing, using the internet to disseminate fake news?
Well, there may not be a direct legal framework or specific law.
Is there any jail time for people who disseminate fake news on the internet?
Depends on the quality of the information. Is it information that's indecent, obscene? Is it so the result of what the information does is actually what is more important?
An unscrupulous person can send a tweet saying the president has died, when we all know that hasn't happened. What would happen to this person?
So it could possibly fall under, in the Computer Misuse Act, under cyber harassment, or
the same law that got Joseph Kabuleta and Stella Nyansi.
I believe that is the law that they were charged under. But the issue would then be, the court has to analyze, is this information objectively leading to the result that is described in the provisions of the law, because the law requires that what you have done is either attacking the person or can cause physical harm or is putting someone in danger or is causing them lack of peace. So there's evidence that has to be gathered, and also the intent of the news that you have put out. So there could be fake news that has absolutely no result. It's just news that is wrong, but there's no one harmed by it, no impact, yes.
So they would let you get off with it?
I mean, that's the thing with the law, is that you have to either fit in it or you don't, especially for penal laws, where the loss of liberty can be a result. The law has to be very careful not to simply impose a penalty where you haven't fit within the exact square of the provision.
Kennedy, there's the introduction of OTT tax, curtail the public's access to information.
Well, it's a relative extent, to which, as earlier on mentioned,
because barefoot law, your mandate, I think, is to make sure that there is proper access of information to the public. So here you have government throwing a clamp on the internet through OTT. Don't you think this, in a way, curtails the public's access to information, again, which is actually prescribed in the Constitution? Again,
as I mentioned, it's a relative extent, and to which majority of information can be acquired through various means. When you're speaking about online engagement and use, it definitely creates a challenge to utilizing resources online for the vast majority, which again can be bridged with understanding who is providing information and which information the public needs to access. Yes.
Phoebe, how has the introduction of OTT affected access to information in Uganda?
What I can say is, there are so many platforms that you can receive information on, and one of the reasons why it is not exactly possible to say that you are fully curtailed is because you have access on other platforms, and that is where the difficulty comes in. There is one area, of course, where business has, I think there've been reports of business going down and online activity reducing, but as with any other jurisdiction, taxes are taxes, and there are so many taxes that we don't agree with that we have to pay. And although my personal belief is that it may have been too soon, it was a bit early because activity wasn't that high. However, yeah, tax is tax and we have to pay, but there's other ways of accessing
activity, I believe,
information.
Phoebe, was kind of really high in the run-up to the 2016 election, I believe. There was a lot of political discourse in Uganda in comparison to the other activities. Yes. So government felt like if we can tap into this, we'll be able to make some really good money. And I remember you were making a projection that they would make around 400 million Uganda shillings. Guess how much they made? Between 20 to 40 million Uganda shillings. So it wasn't really that much. So how has it affected the online community? Those people in the business sector who are using the online community to sell their businesses, how were they affected?
Well, obviously, one of the things is now you have to incur an extra expense before you can make any of the money you were making before. And it's not to mean you were making a lot before. So one of the things we found out while conducting this survey is that there are people who, laws like those favor a lot of larger foreign businesses, foreign online businesses, because these are large scale and they're able to foot fees like that very easily. It's different for a smaller business, and obviously it makes it's an increased expense, but it's something that you would definitely simply have to factor in and continue with business.
Kennedy, tell us and help us understand what were the major takeaways from your report.
The major takeaways are that there is an existing legal framework, that the public and the users of online activity need to be able to inform themselves about. There's existing authorities in Uganda and the legal regime that provide for regulation of activity online. And the majority of recommendation coming from the report as to what the user should be able to be informed about to protect themselves, but also to facilitate their use of online activity. We also make mention of the enforcement mechanism available for particular people who find themselves in violation or being violated by users online.
Well, so let me just get to you, Phoebe. As a journalist, how do I access government information legally?
Legally, yes. So interestingly, this is a part of the law that's actually pretty old. A lot of the cyber laws we're looking at were the newer ones, Electronic Transactions Act and Signatures Act. But for the Access to Government Act, this is an act that has been in place for a while. So it's simply there's a procedure that it spells out where you fill out a form, let the organization or the agency that you want information from know what information you want, in which form you want it, and there's a time period within which they're supposed to respond, which is, I believe, 14 days, and after which, if they have not given you the information, they will let you know what exception they're basing on, because there are exceptions in the law, such as national interest and for the commercial, if it's affecting proprietary interests of a third party, then there are exceptions like those, which mean there are safeguards that they can base on to refuse to give information. However, even after that step, if you believe that that exception really doesn't fit, then you can take it on to the courts of law from that stage. Yeah.
Wonderful. Kennedy, what's to know about cyber law for journalism?
As a journalist, first of all, as I mentioned, you must be enrolled as under the legal the legal framework to be called a journalist. Secondly, you must be able to be aware of the nature of information to be shared on the online platforms. But also, as a journalist, it's important for you to try to work within what the regulators suggest is most conducive. Yes.
Phoebe, what's the pronouncement of the Ugandan law on people who use the internet to send those messages, subversive messages of terrorism?
Yeah. So definitely then we would be covered by different areas of the law. Terrorism in general is provided for in the Anti-Terrorism Act. So any act, be it something that's done through the cyber means or non-cyber means, there is law that will grab you. Other than that, there's also still the Computer Misuse Act. So what would happen is you would probably be facing charges in several areas of the law, and yeah, you'd be prosecuted for that as an act of terrorism, regardless of the means.
Ever since you started this campaign to acquaint the public with the necessary information that they need, how successful have you been?
Yeah, so our biggest attempt is going to be with the launch of this cyber laws report, which is to educate the public about the whole framework of cyber laws that affect them. Because for many people, they think cyber laws are about cyber crimes. For other people, they think cyber laws are just about, I don't know, journalism. So we want to tell people that these laws affect online businesses, they affect civil society organizations, they affect human rights defenders. So in this attempt, we've worked together with our partners, GIZ and Future Challenges, to present this report on Friday. So there will be stakeholders, different stakeholders from the groups that I've mentioned, and we'll have a conversation, a roundtable conversation to understand what do regulators need, what do you need to do as a human rights defender, how do these laws affect you as a business, what measures do you need to take to ensure you're still attracting the revenue you want to attract, but you're in line with the laws. Do you have certificates from NITA? Are you covered, protected? Is there data privacy, means of protection on your sites? So we're having all these conversations in an effort to increase awareness, and that's, as I said, our largest attempt will be at the launch of the cyber laws report.
Kennedy, as we wrap up, you will be launching the cyber crime report that is on Friday. So what do you intend to do afterwards, after the launch of the report? What is your next course of action?
The background of the organization, which is Barefoot Law, is to continuously educate people about the rights, empower them about the legal framework and the legal regime, to be able to enhance their enforcement of rights. We intend to continue our work of informing the general public and the citizen, both the underserved and the indigent, to be informed about the legal regime. Specifically about cyber laws of Uganda, we will continue to publish this content and continue to showcase a material with the public to be more informed, for them to be able to stay educated, empowered, so that they continuously enforce and make sure their rights are not violated.
Kennedy and Phoebe Murungi, thank you for having made the time to speak to us right here on NTV. You've been really, really helpful. You can stay seated for a while. I do hope you did get something right there with regards to cyber laws in Uganda and the online community. The business community is affected. The politicians that are using the internet are also being affected by the cyber laws right there. Let me just link to Mala. She has something amazing for you. Mala?